Yikes, that was, I have no idea.
Yes, we're starting.
Wow.
Like Johnny Mitchell.
Yeah.
They had that random day off.
Yeah,
and they had
Monday.
that. Half day or.
Just checking in, Lori, I know that you're joining us by Zoom. Can you hear the audio from your end, please?
I can hear you.
Great, thanks, Lori. Right, we are at quorum, everyone. Just wanted to say good afternoon, everyone. Let's call things to order. So first of all, I did want to point out, we have a new visitor today. We have our new liaison from Associated Student Government.
Oh,
We have
hi.
Annalise. Annalise.
Nice to meet you guys.
Thank you, Annalise. And also, just as a reminder, you are welcome to join in on our discussions as well. We're happy to have the student voice here. Also, whenever possible, if you can carry what's from these discussions over to ASG, then please feel free to do so. And also, please feel free to invite me or any of the members of this Senate meeting to be able to join you as well.
Okay, thank you.
All right, everyone. I would appreciate the chance for you to take a look at the agenda for today. I just wanted to point out that Maria Villagomez will not be joining us today. She is away at a conference, and also Paloma Arnold as well will not be joining us today. It was Maria who had provided us with a link to her for her report from the BBAA's office. I will only briefly highlight that since it does tie in with scheduling as well. The other thing that I'm going to find out is that we are going to be dropping our consent item. ASCCC had called for exemplary program award nominations. They were to review any potential nominees yesterday, and to bring that to our attention, we put in a placeholder for that just in case we had some nominations. They only had one submission. And it did not fit the criteria for this award. So unfortunately, this year, we will not be nominating anyone for the Exemplary Program Award. Otherwise, in taking a look at the agenda, can I please get a motion to approve the agenda as it appears on screen with those subtractions?
I move.
Okay, we have one.
I approve, I'll second.
Okay, and second, thank you so much. And if you would please, well, are there any public comments to be shared today? And on Zoom, just checking to see who's there. We only have one visitor. We have Lori Vasquez. Otherwise,
I do.
public comment.
I'm sorry to be late. I apologize.
Senate recognizes.
Writing it out and now. So I wanted to communicate, certainly on my behalf and on many of my colleagues in the English department, our unhappiness with the bookstore. And the fact that they have been returning some of our books in the middle of the semester before students have had the opportunity to buy them. This may be specific to English because sometimes it'll be one book at a time, and sometimes we'll do a book in October and a book in November. But this happened last semester. It happened to me and a number of other professors. I've got a list of at least 5 for whom it's happened this semester. And I know that Kim and the work group have been meeting, and I think met today with the woman there. The attitude I'm getting from the bookstore is not tremendously helpful. The advice she gave me was they should buy them earlier. And I said, this is not how our community college students work. And even some on financial aid are not always going in and getting them when they can. And then I have a number of students who are not on the promise who, thinking this is anecdotal, the kid who is literally living on peanut butter and jelly. And I know he's gonna go buy the book at the very, very last minute, and I'm afraid it won't be there. And she said to me, well, he should be on financial aid. Well, maybe so, but he's not right now. And even if he was, that doesn't mean they go when they're supposed to. It has really disrupted a lot of our classes, and I've been telling us we need to find some kind of a compromise. As one of my colleagues who discovered this 3 weeks ago, she went back today, the books still aren't there. So her answer is the compromise should be keep the books in the store. We're hearing a lot about invoices and extra stock and all that. And then we had a disagreement about whether it was a new problem or not. She said, oh, it's not really a new problem. I said, it is a new problem. it's very frustrating, at least within our department right now. So, and I know there's again an effort to deal with it, but I have not heard so many people unhappy about it in 1 week in a really long time. So I promised I'd say something.
I've been copied to some of those messages as
Yeah.
well.
Yeah.
There are also other longstanding concerns with Follett and the interface, and also
yes.
how students are searching for their textbooks as well. That there are some concerns that there were difficulty searching these by course as opposed to by author, which creates lots of problems for students who haven't even taken a look at the syllabus. So there is a work group that has been meeting with Follett. Do we have any other faculty here?
We should probably agendize this. That would be okay. So at our November 13th meeting, in the meantime, I will have an update for the department chair and dean's council meetings from today's meeting.
Thank you. Are there any other public comments for today? Ellen Carey, please.
I haven't planned to make one, but I just wanted to say anecdotally, we've gotten a lot of students in the library who are looking for help with getting textbooks. It is absolutely a problem. Like, it's way more students telling us that the bookstore doesn't have the textbooks they need than before COVID, so that helps.
Laura.
Again, I wasn't gonna say anything, but to piggyback, you probably shouldn't, seriously. I mean,
This is a further discussion.
yeah, I mean, which, you know, or maybe it's okay, but I just.
We can agendize this.
Okay.
Okay. It's much more involved. So. Any other public comments?
I have just like one question, sorry. This is because I'm new, so everybody can yell at me if I'm wrong to speak out, but on the FPSS committee, an issue got raised about there not being enough test proctors to accommodate for people who need separate areas for testing or need to
It's on
accommodate
my
time.
liaison reports.
Okay, so I wanted to bring it up and see what people thought about how to do this, because I mentioned that, you know, I played college sports and, you know, we would have our tutors like travel with us, the proctors, you know what I mean? Like, can't we have somebody that sort of rotates between departments or something to accommodate, you know, these DSPS students? Because it doesn't seem like there's like a good system. So I just want to bring that up.
Maybe if there's any further comment that can be in your liaison's report for FPSS.
Yeah, we could look at it there.
Thank you. Any other public comments, please? All right, everyone, if you would please have a look at the minutes for our previous meeting, that was October 9. If there's a review that reveals anything that needs to be adjusted, if the record needs to be amended, please feel free to mention that. Otherwise, if you can take a look at the minutes, please, and then I would like a motion to approve the minutes.
Make a motion to approve the minutes?
Second.
Second, thank you very much. On to our president's report. Just a couple of brief updates, everyone. So a follow-up from our October 9 meeting where we had taken a vote on our revisited PNR requests and also some requests from out of ITC as well. The context for that discussion was that there was a block of money that was identified on top of the surplus of funding that we had out of the previous fiscal year as well, where the Senate had voted to ask, can we revisit these items and can we actually ask for permission to, can we actually ask at CPC if a recommendation could be put forward to be able to fund those requests. So just to briefly mention, Erica was not at that meeting. She was away at a conference. Armando Ramos and I did present PNR and ITC revisited list. Some of the items that were previously ranked and approved.
Sorry, public comment time. Girl.
Thank you. We are on time. All right. Some of those items on the PNR list and on ITC were revisited because department needs had changed over the last few months since they were last logged in. And also some departments had decided based on enrollments as well, and also the needs of their departments, also based on other grant funding that might have applied as well, that some of their needs had changed. And so the re-ranked items were also reassessed for their total cost. And they presented us a new list to be able to bring to CPC. The discussion did not go much further than that, however, because once again, Erica was not available. So CPC is going to have its steering committee meet And I'm going to bring this up as an agenda item again to be able to have those unfunded items revisited. As for the restructuring of CPC, once again, Erica was not present to be able to discuss, so we are going to defer that to the next agenda for CPC. Budget Committee's first meeting has been delayed till November, but we do have our finalized membership for this. We have Cornelia representing the FA, we have Jamie Campbell, we have Danielle Swiatek, and after a long search, we got a chance to have John Clark also join as a Senate faculty. Certainly. So Budget Committee is going to have its first meeting in November, and we have our finalized membership for our faculty representatives. A reminder, please, all of you have been linked with editing rights to this sheet that summarizes all of the VPs and APs that are available for faculty review. I'm not married to this form, but I figured as a starting point for being able to have a workflow of sorts so that we can actually log in our comments on these docs, that we would be able to have that available, that we have options to be able to say, this is under review, and if it's been approved, we also have options for people to be able to open this back up again. So I thank all of you for being able to contribute to these. Some of these really are within more faculty purview here. AP 7211, which looks at our faculty service areas where they link up with our disciplines. Those need a lot of work. If we can just take a look at the sample of items that are here. We are going to have this as one of our discussion items later today. If you do have some feedback on how this form has been configured, or if there's any way that we can make this easier for you, then please let me know. Also, there's a concern how to be able to get this out to our constituencies. I also wanted to make sure that the dates by which these are rolled out is made transparent to you, as well as the deadlines for these. These will be organized in tabs by month. Right now, we're on the month of October and November and December moving forward. This is also linked to the board docs agenda as well, but it's only for public view as opposed to every one of you or our senators who have editing rights on this document. And again, if there's anything that we can do to be able to make this workflow a little bit easier on us, then please let me know. I'm always open to changing this. Just wanted to try to sort of adjust this and to try to improvise what it is that Rita Boss has put together for BPAP itself. So wanted to make sure that we had some of the same features too. There are also other avenues by which anyone from the community will have the ability to suggest a change to any of our BPs and APs. That is still a process that is under construction. So for the meantime, we're still trying to figure out if any of this is going to work. So far, most of the feedback has been pretty positive. All right, bringing this to your attention as well. This is on short notice, everyone, but this was an email that both Kim and I received only this week. It is a call from ASCCC for those of you interested in being volunteers for a pilot for AI-powered course assistance. I know that that's not always everybody's cup of tea, but it's always worth it to try to see what this might do to be able to improve even our productivity as faculty. Not to be able to take away some of the responsibilities that we have, but are there some things that can add to the efficiency with which we work? And also in our need to be able to provide student with feedback at times when we cannot. So there is an interest form to which you are linked here. The requests for volunteers closes, I believe, tomorrow. There will also, will not close tomorrow, but there is an informational session that is scheduled for tomorrow, 2 p.m. Pacific time. I'll see if I can try to attend that as well. Tomorrow for the informational session. Yes, this did come on very short notice. I also wanted to make sure that Lori was also looped in on this one as well so that they can bring this to ITC. Some of you may have noticed that Maria has scheduled a Brownback session for scheduling. That was also a discussion that I had in a meeting with Erica and with Maria with regard to our FTEs and also how that ties in with our scheduling efforts and productivity as well. And that's where we had some discussions about revisiting the raising of our caps, but also saying, can we do that strategically, knowing that some disciplines have more flexibility than others to be able to do so, but is there room to be able to offer more support if it turns out that people are raising their caps? And also to communicate what the administration is willing to communicate about how it is that we support smaller programs, but also getting back to some of the sentiment that has been expressed here about also trying to help the budget situation when there are disciplines, like in the social sciences, that traditionally have had more of the flexibility to be able to raise their caps. And also the discussion about online instruction and the wait list there to be able to help with attrition issues. But that also meant that there's everyone who wants to weigh in on issues about tutorial support. That means bringing in PNR, but also a discussion about those established caps that we have in our core. That is faculty purview. That needs to be brought into discussion because that is pedagogy that we are talking about. And I'd also thrown in that the members of FPSS might also want to weigh in on that discussion. There were some concerns about the scheduling brown bag being done in collaboration with the Senate, and that we really need to be part of that discussion. So members of the scheduling work group, if you would like to volunteer to be part of the planning meeting for this, then I would appreciate some come forward if your schedules permit. I'd also like to reach out to PNR members of CAC as well and FPSS to also attend to. And
As a point of clarification, that meeting, in terms of the invitation to PNR, CAC and FPSS has not been made yet, right?
Correct.
That's just more aspirational.
correct, this was
Okay.
just this week that this came up in discussion to be able to say, we need to be able to set an agenda for this, for the brown bags.
Okay.
I wanted more brown bag sessions for more faculty input. I'm also going to request high flex attendance so that more voices can come in. The other objective that I want is to be able to say, we have something to report to the department chairs as well. The all chairs meeting is coming up in November as well. So this might be an important one for being able to say, what would be of interest to chairs?
Got it. The department chair meetings before this.
Yeah, it is. Fortunately, that's also where
Not so good.
that's one of the reasons why I wanted a planning meeting also to be able to say this is what's going to happen at the actual brown bag itself.
And as a point, again, further point of clarification, the larger sections focus, is that just one of a number of points or is that the primary? Do you see that as the primary?
That was one.
Okay,
If there are other issues that bear on scheduling, we should
Okay.
really bring that into the planning of the agenda. And lastly, everyone, something that has been added to the board docs resources that came out of a discussion between myself, Cornelia, Maria, and Erica was about where we are in terms of our FOM. I know that it was not very happy news that we could not extend an open call for new and replacement hires, and that's because we are well above our fund. In fact, we are about 23 over. But also to be able to put things in perspective as well, this is available through the Chancellor's office. It takes a look at where campuses are in terms of their fund compliance. And what we are finding is that there are community colleges across the board that are over their fund as well. We want to put that in perspective. This is not a happy situation for us locally at SBCC. And I know that it can sometimes exacerbate that conversation that says the campus is in severe decline. But it's also important to note where other community colleges as well. The only one on that list is Rio Hondo College, where they are right on the dot. 204.8 is their current bond in compliance with 204.8. But there are also questions fiscally about where they are as well and whether or I'm just going to leave it at that. That there are some questions about the management of their finances. Last time I talked there, they were always in financial straits, but that was 10 years ago. So,
So Josh,
yes.
just so everybody knows, every other school except the one he mentioned is over their fund and some way over their fund. We're over by 13.
23, he said.
Well, I just counted from 183 to
Josh
197.
just said 23. And that's
I
what we
just counted.
We're not at that.
We're,
That's what we.
That was
so
Maria's
we heard that
report
from-
last
so
We heard
Sarah,
that from Maria.
Maria said we were like 27.
so our compliance number is 183 and our P2 fund is 197.1.
This document says July 8th, though.
Says what?
It's,
July.
well, it has a P2 fund, so I don't know. I asked her to give us the current fund sheet, so if she didn't, that's her
Does
problem.
P2 is
thought we
supposed to
were
be the
at
accurate number?
204.
So,
We're in the 200s.
so anyway, maybe she hasn't given us, it says fall 24 at the top.
Also, for our ASG representative, we were calling it the FON. I told myself that I would not try to acronym away. FON is our faculty obligation number. So it's basically the number of full-time faculty for which we can say, this is how many faculty, full-time faculty you need in order to be able to deliver the education that your curriculum requires, and also what the state is able to fund. How much the base level of funding is to be able to support.
So when you say we're over, you say that's additional faculty members, so it would be
More than
23.
we're getting paid
More
for.
than what we're getting paid.
But I think we better clarify, I don't see 23 here.
I think I may
And
have,
if this is the fall, this is the actual fall 24 P2 fund, which is what they base the numbers on, is P2, then we're not over by 23.
it's in 17 that we're over, 14.
Yeah.
That's what we were before.
14.
Yep.
Last year,
Where did Maria get?
That's when she's back, right? We'll find out.
Yeah, she's absolutely said around 27.
Yeah.
It's almost 20.
Was it one?
Right.
Yes.
That's what I remember.
And
It's like
Laura,
the number of faculty members.
If every district is over their fawn,
Yep,
except for one,
yep.
might it beg the question of, is the state calculating fawn properly?
Thank you. Well, I think what's happened to all of us is COVID hit. And so we hired faculty, we did things, not realizing.
So it's a bad thing, right? You don't want to be
down.
They keep
everyone,
Okay, perfect. Thank you so much.
everyone, I will try to see the chancellor's office to see if there's been any discrepancy in terms of the document that I had linked to board docs, just to make sure for accuracy. I did, however, just want to remind everyone that we do have a time-stamped item of 4 o'clock that is a hard stop, because we may have Laura Castro who will be coming.
Sure.
Hello, Laura.
I'm good, I can stay beyond 4.
Just want to make sure that we have enough time. All right, everybody. So that's my president's report, everyone. I wanted to point out as well, once again, that Vice President of Academic Affairs, Dr. Villagomez, will not be joining us. She is at a CIO conference currently, but she did leave us an agenda here. She did leave us a report here. One of the things that I would like to draw to your attention without having to present it myself, you can review this yourself, spring 2025 scheduling builds, and also some recommendations as well. Drawing some attention to a link that she has about what student-centered scheduling practices might look like too. The only other thing that I wish was actually included here was a reminder that this Friday for our 16-week courses, that the drop dead last date to be able to withdraw from classes with a withdraw on your record will be this Friday. So you may want to remind your department colleagues accordingly, so that we make sure that students who have stopped out do not have an F on their record.
So probably a question for a later discussion, but since I haven't been in this body in several years, that is sent by. When we look at the heat map, and I get it, a lot of clustering in 10 to 2, and that's from, I think English and math is probably spread out more, but still, just because you offer it outside the window doesn't mean the students necessarily will take it. So have we done any kind of a survey? Have we done any kind of actual demand analysis before we just assume that's a good idea?
And one of the challenges whenever we come to discussing about scheduling, there's always a discussion about the heat map. And there's a challenge that I see with that, because that tells us where students are mostly going, but is that because that's what's available versus what students actually need? And it's also a challenge as well, especially when we consider what modalities that we have available to us. Many times, and please, this is also where a student voice would also be helpful. Maybe take this back to ASG.
Yeah.
I mean, there's always this question, here's what we have available. And sometimes they will say, but I need the face-to-face courses because that's where I thrive the most. But also schedules change. And so students' priorities, their work schedules, their family schedules also change, and sometimes they end up in online anyway. And so trying to get some sense as to what works for students so that we can maybe take, and I hate to put it in these terms, take the risk of actually scheduling outside of that 10 to 2 block, where we're worried about these courses going under enrolled.
Yes.
And where we risk also for students who wanted those courses to say, these came in under enrolled, I'm sorry, we have to cancel these. That is an ongoing concern.
That's my concern, especially with a lot of the, I'll be very general, he'll just hear discussion within the community about how many classes we're offering online. And the idea of whether or not that is what students are demanding, or is that sometimes what we're offering? When I do very anecdotal, raise your hand surveys in my first year classes, and I say, how many of you are face-to-face, all face-to-face? How many of you are enrolled in an online class in addition to this one? Most hands go up. And then I ask, how many of you chose it because it was online? No, how many of you wanted it online, or, and most of the hands go down. And some are saying, I would have preferred it face-to-face, it just wasn't there. So it's the larger question is, I'd like to know what the demand is before we make scheduling decisions. So I'm sure that's not a new request, but I just don't know if there's something in the works to try and get that from students.
I agree. And again, there is always that desire on my part to speak with as far as student needs are concerned. The challenge also is the students' voices that we need are not always reflected in the survey returns
That's right.
themselves. Sometimes the students who don't respond to surveys are the ones that we absolutely need to
exactly
hear
right.
from. And so I don't know if we have a mechanism for that to be able to peer-to-peer get students take when it comes to scheduling.
Josh, so I think one of the ways is to pull our students, so of course, then surveys are always voluntary. But also if you had 2 classes and you offered one at somewhere in that 10 to 2 popular time frame and one online, which fills quicker. And then maybe asking the students, why did you choose online? There is a great need for online.
Oh, sure.
For our non-traditional students, like our single working parents and so forth. So we've got to continue.
Well, I'm not against
online.
offering some, I'm just looking where some of the offerings are primarily online and students are saying, I couldn't get a face-to-face class in that, 100 level class. And again, but this is anecdotal, this is coming from 3 classes
Right.
that I teach, so I hate making decisions without some kind of data, and I get that it can be flawed sometimes, but we're not the ones who, I'd like to hear from the students more.
Yeah.
I agree. And perhaps also this is yet another item for that meeting that we need to call for the brown bag sessions agenda. But I'm sorry to say it, it hadn't occurred to me. Now we have an ASG rep. Maybe we can invite a contingent of your peers.
Please let me know how I could help.
Yeah.
Was it Keller gonna do some sort of survey and like.
The idea
Uh,
was
sorry?
to develop a student research group,
Yeah.
just like they established at Oxnard College, scheduling as being one of the things that they would look at. And again, on the understanding, sometimes peer-to-peer, student peers know to ask questions that faculty do not always know how to ask or how to be able to ask it and frame it. So I think that's something that I would like to visit ASG.
Perfect.
Everyone, I'd like to draw your attention that once again, Vice President of Student Affairs Arnold will not be here. She has not provided me with an update, but as I am in meetings with her, I'm going to ask her if there were any other updates that she wants us to bring forward to the next Senate meeting.
Josh, I got my FPSS in too late. I put it into the Google Doc. Do you want me to try to email it to you to display it or wait till next time?
Sure.
I know it's hard. When I was there, I hated trying to deal with anything in real time, so. It's
If you want- if you-
Google Doc you shared. with
If you
us.
can share that with me, it'll be at the top of my inbox. I can just put it up.
You sure you want to?
Yeah,
So do you want me to, should I share the link to the Google Doc you gave us or do you want
Sure.
to copy and paste? it?
yeah, I make sure to tell people not to send me personal email. That appears on the top of my
Was there
inbox.
anything else in Maria's report that was of note that we need to talk about?
I barely got this
Oh, okay,
within the last hour or
Oh,
so,
okay, got
so
it,
that's
okay.
one.
the numbering initiative, that's.
Tara could probably speak to all the work that is happening with regard to Common Core numbering. But also to know that we have a number of webinars to be able to help with that. The faculty have been voluntold to be able to participate here as well. And my thanks to Tara also for fronting that work to be able to reach out to departments. That is a lot of communication that you are handling up. All right. Kim, have you shared?
I did send an email. I shared the link in the email and then I copy and pasted my report. So it'd be your first email, but again. It's always later when you're waiting for email to happen, right?
Yeah, it may take a little bit of time. Let's just
It says I
time to populate on my inbox. All right, folks, so getting to the agenda, we do have our Senate liaisons report. Just wanted to ask our committee liaisons. We have Dee, we have Katie, we have Elizabeth here. Is there anything that you wanted to highlight in brief? It's also okay to say, because I noticed some of these committees have not met in time as well. It's also okay to say next time.
Well, the meeting that I was part of, the PNR, ITC and others were canceled due to either the Friday or some other reason, so.
Any other updates? I think that we covered pretty much what we needed to out of CPC. Otherwise, and Safety Committee did not meet, Planning and Resources Committee did not meet, ITC did not meet.
So if you want to do the email real quick, we can add that.
There we are. All
We
right.
just have to add this to the report. I'm really sorry. We used to have it live to the last second, so of course I went with that.
Just to note, you can say ITC did not meet because Lori participated in the Collegiality in Action Program Review Breakout.
There you go.
Thank you, Lori. I was assuming you knew what you were doing, but yes.
So you can read details. I think the most important part is, they were working out budget with different types of, raises and things. They just changed the LRC opening. Paperwork's going really well now. We used to have a lot of trouble hiring, but looks like that's been, going well if you look into October. But the one that I wanted to make sure that we aired because of Beth's opening, comment today was the bottom bullet point, so that for October. So if you just maybe want to make it a tiny bit bigger too, Josh. So there's details of the hiring, that they're doing well as far as our PDF hiring packet stuff. But if you go all the way down, the discussion, scroll, there we go, there. So discussion of lack of evening hour support for students on campus came up. DSPS testing, general campus operations. So the DSPS center isn't open long enough on most days, so some students are scheduled to take exams 7 or 8 hours before the rest of the class takes it. And so the issue has been raised, but due to staffing and budget concerns, DSPS hasn't been able to offer additional evening hours. So just wanted to get that, in the record. And it is we have a discussion item at the end of today that's related to this question about testing.
Testing.
Yeah. Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Everyone, thank you for your attention to our Senate subcommittees as well. I appreciate the updates for these. And once again, if there are any further updates that need to be appended to the doc that we see in board docs, that's a static copy that's viewable. Please just let me know so that we can update that accordingly. All right, everyone, if we can please move on to our informational items. This is just an FYI, just to keep everybody up to date as to what's coming out of BPAP. Once again, we have a process that is still in the works for re-examining our BPs and APs. Just wanted to draw to your attention, this was approved by BPAP. This is looking at AP 3415. It's on immigration enforcement activities. Again, born out of a lot of questions with regard to how to be able to not only protect our faculty, but also our undocumented students as well, just in case there are immigration officers who should show up to campus requesting information, potentially disrupting activities in the classroom, and also any concerns that we have about them interacting with some of our most vulnerable of students. Once again, this was approved at BPAP. If you would please review, just in case there are any things that pop out to you that say this still needs some tightening up in the language. But again, this is in the service of protecting some of our most vulnerable students. I would encourage you to from time to time. And also know that although there is a process that has been streamlined to be able to say from members of BPAP to our constituency groups, there is also an avenue on the BPAP website that is still being put on a trial run that says there's a red button that we are trying out that says any member of the community can request a change and a revisitation of our existing BPs and APs. And didn't always know this off the top of my head because there are academic policies and then there are administrative procedures, which still in casual conversation, APs are in reference to our administrative procedures, BPs are board policy.
Is this a revision of an existing AP or a brand new AP?
It's a revision.
It's a revision.
And how was it different? If you don't want to, or does anybody know?
That I did not have an
Like there was a
revised copy.
default date. Were there any? It was new in 2019 and it just didn't end up on the website. So that's why BPAP immediately approved it. We're using it, we're legally required, but somehow it just wasn't posted. So that's why it was immediately
Other dates.
approved. Yes, at the bottom.
29.
So it's been approved since then. So it's just one of those loopholes, so BPAP wouldn't usually immediately approve something, but it did in this case. And then Josh's comment, if you do read it, have any concerns, let us know. We'll reconsider it, but we just wanted it needed to be on the website. So that's why it went through that quickly.
Okay, thank you.
And also what came out of the October 11th event, just to be able to put this on everybody's radar, there are always some concerns about the visibility of the agenda and when these are being rolled out as well. We are trying to work on trying to make that much more visible and also to announce that to the campus as well. That was at least one of the pieces of feedback that came out of the work group that met in the afternoon sessions for October 11 about making BPAP a little bit more transparent for the community as well. But we're also trying to do that on our end. Just wanted to make sure to draw this to your attention. Item 6.02. These are some more APs that are rolling out. We want to make sure that this is on our regular rotation. AP 3540 is with regard to sexual and other assaults on campus, updated language there. And also BP 7340, which I had looked at along with Cornelia. We also pointed out that members of CACA needed to take a look at that because that is not only faculty, that also covers classified staff and also managers as well. Again, just putting that on your radar and also noting that these will be rolled into the spreadsheet to which all of you are linked with editing rights. Column E is where you can put in your recommendations for any of the changes that we need to make to these APs. The only reason why we didn't give you the actual Google Doc itself was because we wanted to make sure to preserve the language as it was, along with any comments that were delivered to. And it's Rita Boss who is providing us with all of those copies in PDF form so that you could see the evolution of these APs and BPs while they're under review. As I mentioned, consent item on ASCCC Exemplary Program Award nominations. We do not have any nominees, so we are striking that from the agenda. Which brings us to the item that we had visited for all of 6 minutes in the last Senate meeting. This is in regards to AP 7151. This revolves around our evaluation process, specifically with regard to our 5 performance criteria. I wanted to make sure that we gave enough discussion to this item. I am mindful of the fact that we have now agendized this 3 times and also wanted to say, well, yeah, because when it comes to these APs, we have to live with these for a long time. And there are some things on the updated version of the AP that are worth revisiting as well. Some of the comments that were left at the last meeting there was a question as to whether or not some of the things that were presented here were actually measurable by departments. And so there is some wording that I think is worth revisiting. I do like the idea of us taking a look at this a little more carefully because the goal for the AP committee was to try to infuse equity into these 5 performance criteria. But there are some questions as to how measurable and also enforceable they are at the department level. There were also concerns as to whether or not, when it comes to faculty responsibilities, if they did not also give part-timers there too as well. I have taken this copy and I've highlighted a couple of the items in reviewing the recording from the last session, just to be able to say, these are some of the areas that are worth looking at again. With regard to some of the language that we have here, presents material in a culturally relevant, inclusive, and accessible way for a diverse student population. There are some questions as to what culturally relevant means, and also whether or not that is in need of some updating with regard to recent professional development that has shifted the language away from saying culturally relevant to culturally responsive, a la Zaretta Hammond's work. It is a way of being able to say, you have practices already that are considered culturally responsive. You just may not necessarily have had a word to be able to describe it. These are practices that are less Western-centric, that focus on social learning opportunities, that invite student voice. But it's that phrase, culturally responsive, that can sometimes draw up a lot of questions. Sometimes that means surface level one when it comes to understanding about how other cultures work. Is that a discussion about their customs, their language, their holidays, their style of dress, to which many have often said in many professional development forums, I just do not have the capacity to be able to study all of the cultures represented, as opposed to culturally responsive, which gets at the ways of thinking, the ways of interacting, the student voice that you bring into your classroom, which many of us already do. But that's something I also wanted to throw out to the Senate as well, to be able to say, do we need to go to our colleagues to be able to ask, how is this going to be measurable? And also, some things in discussion as well from some of our other faculty too. Is this something that has to be discussed at the department level? They're the ones who set their SLOs. These are the things that we write into the core. If we're going to talk about culturally relevant, would it be worth it to include language that says, as interpreted by the instructor or department and articulated in the core? This addresses the role of part-timers as well, because all of us have to be able to attend to the goals as outlined in the core. Does this move departments towards something measurable and tangible? That is always a concern. How are you going to bring this up in the evaluation process? Are they sticking to the core? Departments need to have some ownership of this as well. Those are just some opening thoughts that I wanted to just summarize all together, plus any feedback that came in after that meeting. Also, some questions about some wording here about assessment modalities. Not entirely sure what that means. Are there any other concerns about AP 7151 that we want to discuss now? Sabrina, please.
Are those the changes from the last meeting that we had when Melissa was here?
That
Or we don't have those changes yet?
we don't have those changes.
Okay.
Actually, this was the static copy that I was provided that I appended. What I've highlighted here was just highlighted because that's what we actually talked about in the 5 to 6 minutes that we were looking at this at the end.
And is this the one that's hot linked in the agenda?
But it doesn't,
It's in an attachment now.
It's an
I just, where, because it
Actually,
doesn't.
no, these I actually, you're correct. I actually did the highlights myself, but I can append that to board docs.
So that, there's a hot link in the agenda that's not.
And it doesn't have.
That one,
That's
the blue link there, I actually removed because that was to an older copy. The only reason why it's looking like hypertext is because that's board docs.
So-
I tried to remove the formatting, it just will not allow me to do it. I tried to rewrite it, it wouldn't let me.
So
we don't have this copy.
Which link here should we be looking at?
So you should be looking at the attachment.
This one.
Yes.
But
The
your
highlights I
are
just
not in it.
included for visibility here for discussion.
Yeah, the comments over there are not included in that link.
The comments on the side are mostly just saying,
Highlight.
this is highlighted. The one comment that I put in here for discussion was just to rehash what we went over in the last meeting. But you're correct, I should have included that as an attachment directly into board docs for everybody's viewing.
Will we get the updated edit from Melissa before we approve it?
Yes.
Okay.
And there are also some discussions about where we go from here. Again, if there's any additional wording that you want revisited, I think that's worth discussing here today. But there were also some questions as to whether or not we want to get some more input from our department colleagues. And also the possibility, do we need a work group to be able to to be able to help organize some of our thoughts on this as well. One possibility was to suggest we could solicit volunteers from the Senate to be part of a work group that might interface with the AP committee. And then give them enough time maybe to revisit this on our final meeting for the semester, December 4th, and then maybe move to action there. Okay.
So I sent this out to my full-time faculty because my full-time faculty are the ones that do all the adjunct evaluations, and we require all of our faculty to do a self-evaluation. So I was curious to see sort of what the response would be. I really only got one significant response. He's actually on the AP committee and he felt that this was a good direction to go, and that even giving these to our adjunct, it would provide an opportunity to have a conversation with them at least about these issues, which I think is really important. However, I do think some kind of a work group would be good, because it would be really great to have examples with some of these, like what would we be looking for, particularly in a class that we don't teach or may not be that familiar with? What are some key questions that we could ask our faculty? I think would be really, really good. I think philosophically, it's great, and I think this is our responsibility to do this, but I do think the application is going to be a little challenging.
I agree. The idea of a work group being put together from across disciplines also, I think, is important. Just to be able to say, sometimes for departments that still need to move along on this, departments can't know what they don't. And sometimes it's just helpful to be able to collaborate across disciplines. That's what I'm thinking would come out of a work group as well. I think Danielle had her hand up, and then Tara, please.
Just the criterion to number 5 demonstrates interest in student engagement. That like really does not seem measurable to me.
I agree.
And now that deans can vote on
Tenured.
non-tenured, like it would be easy to weaponize that if you wanted to. And so I do think like a lot of these can be weaponized. So really thinking about like what is measurable, and then maybe there needs to be like a guidance document that goes along with it, so that to make it productive, but also to protect people.
And make it equally applied.
And equal apply, and then like some disciplines, like mine, it's a lot easier to have like inclusive material versus other disciplines where, you know, the discipline itself doesn't lend itself easily to that.
I agree. For some of the language here demonstrates interest. I think the previous wording also said demonstrates enthusiasm. That's since undergone some change. But again, how is that measurable? I don't know. There's nothing standard about trying to measure it that way.
I mean, it's a great idea. We should all be doing that, but.
It also introduces lots of bias into the evaluation process when students get a chance to be able to weigh in. What are they actually being drawn to when someone says you are inspiring interest on the students? Where it could be something else. It could be entirely your demeanor, but have nothing to do with the content of the course. So those are some of the challenges that I have with this. If there was language that I really appreciated here that already is included, it's that highlighted in green under criterion 2.1. Consistent with the course of record outline, because then that gives us a chance to say departments have some ownership over this. That was actually Tara's thing.
Yeah, I just want to share that some of the motivation for updating this AP are new Title V regulations about evaluating DEIA practices and evaluation. However, it's a bookend regulation.
Yes.
Because it started off as addressing DEIAA in the course outline of record for this reason. So if you look at the course outline of record now, a lot of these things that appear to be difficult to assess or measure are now in the course outline of record. So we have a DEIAA tab where each department decides what it looks like in their discipline. And CSE worked really hard at creating a website with examples and guidance and practices, but that's what's missing here in this current draft and why I want to support a work group trying to look at these two pieces of regulation as bookends so that the language is really clear and that the evaluator and the evaluatees know where to go for resources and guidance on how to see what this looks like in real time.
The other advantage of going back to the core, I always bring this back. We gotta revisit those slows as well. What are you trying to assess from your students? This opens up that conversation that says these need to be edited. So we have, if I may just go in order, we had, I believe I saw it was Jess and then Elizabeth and then Roosevelt, please. Jess?
Trying to look for an appeal process on here. Is there one? Because if we have, I guess, subjective criteria, then it seems like we should also put maybe an appeals process, because if you say I didn't do the thing, I did do the thing, I want the chance to like show that I did the thing.
That's part of the regular evaluation policy.
Because I know there's like a re-evaluation, and even on the links. AP, there's the like needs improvement and then also the reevaluation, like development plan. So it seems to me there should also be like an appeal process, just at least a chance to show the work that you've done.
I agree. I mean, when you think about the words culturally relevant, at the individual instructor level, there may be disagreements as to what that means. And so that requires some opportunity for faculty to be able to appeal that. I agree. Elizabeth, please.
Oh, yeah, I just want to give more of my support about the course outline of record thing, because like, for example, in math, I mean, we worked on that. We decided that was okay with us, what we said. So if you just refer to that, we'd be fine, because we already decided what that meant for us, because we had to already. So if you just put that in there, it's all. So worker.
So would that go at the top of all the criteria or would it go in each one? That's something the work group could figure out where to put that?
Yeah.
So that's kind of their shared recognition, like support of going to the core, which is discipline based, more concrete.
Well, and every core has not been revised to include that yet.
Oh, right.
I'm confused about the work group. Didn't the work group do this?
No,
it's a committee.
Oh, okay, sorry.
Which is a work group of the Senate. But
Right.
it's doesn't have as much representation now that this is real. That's gonna be like this policy we're all gonna follow. An invitation beyond that committee of people for the final draft for Senate approval.
And if I may, please, Roosevelt.
I think what's really important here is, I've heard it kind of said off and on, but we really need to be very careful that these are able to be objectively measured, because when things are subjective, then that's when we're looking for appeals and other potential problems, just like our SLOs, those need to be objectively measured. So trying to take our, hey, I like you so much, I'm gonna give you like the greatest review because you're, my friend type thing. We really have to make sure that the wording is very specific.
So I'm a little, I agree with everything everybody said, but this worries me. The last sentence, the following general professional criteria shall serve as the sole basis for evaluating all faculty. Are you kidding me? We're at the top of the performance criteria, it's the last sentence. I mean, this is not the sole criteria. I mean, we have a departmental checklist. We have student surveys, we have observations by our colleagues. This is not the sole basis. And also, unless you require, remember, self-evaluations are not required in our policy. Our department decided years ago that we thought it was a valuable thing to do, and we think it helps all of us do that, but it's not required. So how are you gonna make this the sole criteria if people aren't even doing a
Well, but
self-evaluation?
look, it is those 5 things, Kathy, which
Well,
all somewhat do cover a lot of the areas of evaluation. It's not just all of these things that we've read, it's. those
Well,
5.
except that these are the 5, these criteria that we're looking at are the 5 criteria.
The demonstrate, yes. I
This is the
understand.
5 criteria
Yes,
that's
I understand.
explicitly described here. It doesn't say in addition to other things.
Yeah, that's true.
I just want to draw everybody's attention to the time. We are close to our 4 o'clock timestamp. I just want to have one more comment from Cornelia, please.
Yeah, just a quick response to Kathy. So Kathy, this is the sentence that you told, which is, this is from the current existing AP 70.
Right.
I think the one distinction we have to draw is, this is the criteria. That is our overarching goals, who we want to be as faculty, what we see as our kind of like, what we want to be as a faculty member is, and then there's the tools that we are using to measure that, and the criteria, the checklist is one of those tools, right? The checklist is one of those tools to measure. I believe that is would be probably number 4, criteria 4, where it talks about your getting your book orders. That is, right? But the self-evaluation would also be a tool, right? And then that's later in the process. So, again, this is long existing language. This is how we work. Just want to remind us. It's
Right.
Right, and I double checked it's actually.
Yeah.
Yeah, I just got a little worried because the language changes, the extreme language changes in this policy.
I-
Really put a different sort of light on this.
Yeah.
So Kathy, what you're saying is that last sentence needs to be rewritten.
Well, no, I think our work group, if we're gonna have a work group, should sort of look at all the things that we've asked and come up with some answers to those things.
From what I'm hearing, this is a worthwhile document to be able to revisit. I don't think that we're ready to move towards trying to approve this or to be able to send it back. I think that it needs some more input from the Senate. And again, the spirit of this document and what its intent for all these modifications, I think that they are actually good. But I think that there is a refinement of the language that is needed to revisit this. It sounds like there's a desire for a motion to be able to solicit volunteers for a scheduling work group. One that might interface with the AP committee, also get some feedback from our department colleagues as well, because they're the ones who should have some ownership, or at least that's what it sounds like. Can we maybe consider a work group that will convene with their findings on December 4 to close out the semester? If so, if I'm seeing the nods in the room, then may I have a motion to solicit volunteers for a work group to take a look at AP 7151?
I make a motion.
I wanted to ask a question about this, though, if I may.
Candace, finish on the second.
I'll second it.
And now
Hey, I still don't understand why the AP committee can't do what we want. And instead of creating an additional group that's working side by side.
I have a quick comment on that too, in response to Jeff. They have worked on this for a very long time. They brought it to us, they revised it on the basis of what we said.
Yeah.
Sent it back, and so they have been working on this for quite some time. But I think there's some concern that it just needs a new pair of eyes, basically, and that it's a little insulting to go send it back yet again to say,
Right.
nope, get back to work on it.
Right.
At some point, it's like, okay, this was a major contribution you made on all of this. Let's take it to another body that just can maybe have a different lens for it. I think that's the reason.
And I'll just add more context for that. These policies that are so integral to our workplace, to our job requirements, always follow a process where it gets to the Senate, it becomes Senate. It's just, we have full representation. AP doesn't have full representation of division. This is a huge commitment So it's Katie, it's like, it sort of just makes it more serious. We're gonna actually approve this and live by this, so that the work group gave us this amazing first draft, and this last tinkering and gathering information is a Senate responsibility because it is so much bigger. We have adjunct faculty reps here, just sort of, that's that's the thought anyway, that it just sort of comes to this level for last polishing.
Plus, the people in this room are gonna know their slows better than whoever is on this. I don't know who are on the work group or whatever that created this, but I think that then you can have Elizabeth talking about her spot, people being a little bit more connecting.
With those follow-up comments in mind, everyone?
I wanted to add, then I'm done. I get that, and I guess I just want. You said it's almost an insult to send it back, but I feel like it can almost be viewed as an insult to say like, you did great, but like, let us finish it because we're better. So it's all about perspective and how you view it and how you convey that message on why we're moving forward, I guess. So totally fine. It makes sense. Like, let's get a new set of eyes on it. But also let's tell them that why, like, they have their vision and they were like locked in on their vision. And now they're stuck in their vision, which is that's the product. So like, it makes sense we need new eyes, but I just feel like it could be insulting as well.
So just to let you know, I have been in touch with Melissa Menendez.
Yeah.
Because she was wondering what action might we take today with regard to 7151, and to suggest the possibility that there might be a work group that might want to convene to be able to interface with the AP committee. And she took that positively, at least that's my perspective on it.
Yeah, they're probably stoked to be done with it. So there's that too,
But she did want me to convey to everyone else as well here about the spirit of the changes that were made. For the most part, they agree with me, but I agree there needs to be some refinements of the language. We have a timestamp of 4 p.m. to make sure that our next agenda item is met. Folks, we have a motion on the table. It looks like there is agreement to move forward with a scheduling work group and to solicit volunteers. All in favor?
You mean an evaluation work group, don't you?
The work group for
Right.
77.
When you said scheduling. work
You
group.
keep saying scheduling.
Did I say, I'm sorry.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, I'm sorry, I've just been looking at.
I know.
I've been looking at our.
That's
enrollments.
okay.
All right, about AP 71 on our 5 performance criteria.
Work group.
Work group to return December 4 with their findings.
Aye.
So are we voting?
Are there
on this
anyone?
now?
We should vote.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? All right, we will move forward, but not at this moment. 4 p.m. 4:02 p.m. Sorry, we're off. Close enough. Kara
That's pretty.
and Laura Castro. I'm sorry I didn't see.
She's.
But I may draw everyone's attention to agenda item 8.02, revisions to GE requirements to local AA and AS degrees per AB 928. So our assembly bills, folks.
Sharing the screen over there.
Yeah, so.
I do this.
Yeah, there is. And just maybe we can check in with those on Zoom. Everyone on Zoom, if we could just get a thumbs up or a verbal acknowledgement, can you see the PowerPoint in its presentation mode? Okay, only 3 people on Zoom. Please feel free to chime in. Let us know if you can't see what we're seeing.
All right, that's. I've learned that I have to stay somewhat close over this away in order for the microphone to pick me up. Apologies. Thank you all for having us. I'm here representing the work group that CAC put together to address the proposed changes to our local GE requirements. And so I am joined today by our fabulous articulation officer and counselor, Castro.
equally fabulous as our curriculum coordinator. Many of you will, or many boxes of chocolate, just saying. But we were also, as part of our work group, we were going to Kathy O'Connor to represent the PE division. She stepped out. There she is.
Step out.
She's not gonna go away. We also had in our work group, Kristen representing the sciences. We had Sally from the library, and Ellen is here today, so I'm really glad to see Ellen. Likewise, giving input to the work that we're doing. I think that was our full group, right?
Seemed like we had somebody else.
English. Okay. Anywho, it was a fabulous group of people. And part of the reason why we met and why we are here today is because we have a pretty firm deadline of when we have to implement some new changes that once again have come down to us. That started, the kind of seed for it came from an assembly bill, and it's now resulted in changes in Title V regulations. So I'm going to try to give the simplest version of what is a really complex situation, but Laura is here and she can answer all your complex questions. I'm gonna give like the, new changes for dummies version here in the PowerPoint, and then Laura can answer any real questions you have. So I passed out for you a draft that is now even, as of just an hour ago, slightly out of date, so we will get, share with you all of those updates, but also LinkedIn board docs. There's a ton of resources should you ever have insomnia and really want to read this Title V regulation. Work for us.
And Terry, you might want to tell them the curriculum committee did approve this. It's
I
not
will.
just the work.
I will. I'm getting there. You've just ruined my.
I didn't hear it.
Very good.
You didn't hear
No,
anything.
you can say it again.
Stacy has approved this. So I want to start by just reminding everybody that we have a really diverse student population. And so there are many different pathways on their educational and career journeys that our students are on. And that's really going to determine what pathway they're on for their general education requirements. And I want to likewise make this distinction between a general education requirement versus a major requirement. And what we're talking about here today are general education requirements, not major requirements. Okay, so nothing has changed for major requirements. So we have on one of our pathways, we have our students who are transfer bound. And for us, those are mostly seeking admission into one of the UCs or one of the CSUs. Of course, there are also students seeking private schools and out-of-state schools, but mostly that's our big feeder schools. And for those students, the GE pathway that they've been on is either IGETC for the UCs or the CSU general breadth. We're going to learn today that that's changing for those students. We likewise have our students in our fabulous series of CTE programs, and they're not typically following IGETC or the CSU general breadth. Instead, they're following our local GE requirements. And those are the student population we're really going to focus on here today. And of course, we have a whole third population of students in non-credit, and they may kind of intersect and intertwine along a lot of these pathways as they move back and forth between credit and non-credit. That's just to help to orient you, and that's the easiest part of our conversation. Because obviously, once a student is here, in addition to fulfilling all of their general education requirements, they're here to major in something as well. So students, even let's say if they are UC or CSU bound, they can actually be seeking our local AA, or they could seek our AAT or ADT. But for their GEs, they're gonna follow the IGETC or the CSU general breadth. And that's where things get a little confusing for us. So students are trying to chart all this out. It's hard for us to imagine how hard it is for them. So what has been happening over the last couple of years is, as always, we take our lead in shaping our programs of study based on a number of outside agencies that pass regulations for us or certain standards. So we can't design anything and everything but as we would have it. We take some of our guidance from the Chancellor's office. Some of our guidance comes from legislation, some of which is really hotly contested. I think maybe enough five, not to traumatize you, but that is one. Likewise, too, we have certain standards to meet from ACCJC. Of course, for our students in their majors, a lot of that's being shaped by what the requirements are from, say, the CSUs or the UCs. And for CTE, it's equally confusing or complex, I should say, because it's being really shaped by their accrediting and licensing boards. All of these things are kind of shaping up our programs. What's happened recently is another assembly bill. Now, there's a common theme here. There's an Assembly Bill 928, which it's a very lengthy bill. It has a lot of moving parts to it. But as we'll see here today, the goal of the Assembly Bill is to try to simplify the general education requirements, mostly though for transfer students. However, taking this kind of impetus from 928, Title V has now changed and had some new regulations that are prompting us to look at our local GE requirements. And remember, for us, that's mostly talking about our CTE students. They're on that GE pathway. Okay, so you can't really understand the Title V regulations unless you also understand the Assembly Bill 928 regulations. And I'm gonna very, very simply explain what that is. Previously, for transfer students, they could either complete the general education requirements for the UCs, which is known as IGETC. Terrible acronym. Don't ask me to tell you what they all stand for, intersegmental something or other. And then, yeah, show off. And then, of course, for the CSUs, they have the CSU general breadth, and you can't see these, and that's good, because it'll just give you a headache. But if you compare the two, you would see there's some overlap between the two, and then they have these rupture points where they're different. And what Assembly Bill 928 wanted to do was a kind of GE mashup, to sort of combine them into a single solitary GE pathway. And what they came up with is a long amount of work. It took about 2 years at least to try to kind of reconcile what were the IGETC requirements with the CSU general breadth requirements. You could already see just from the starting point, UCs had about 34 to 37 requirements, depending on whether or not you were a STEM major, and the CSUs had 39. What they ultimately proposed was having a 34 unit GE pathway that thankfully students decided to name. And what they named it is CalGETS. And so starting this coming fall, right? Yeah, so all of our students who are transfer bound are going to be following CalGETS mostly. They actually can choose, but they're mostly going to be following CalGETS. So you can see here that these are the areas of CalGETS, and the CSUs didn't quite win as probably as much as they would have liked. These, because they cannot be legislated to, they typically have the upper hand in a lot of these discussions. But some of the victories for the CSUs, they did get an oral communication requirement in. They did that. But you'll note here that what used to be on the CSU that has now been removed is our lifelong learning and self-development. Kathy, I'm sure will help us through that conversation about how hard that was fought. But ultimately that was left out of CalGETS. What you can also see here then is what's the start of the new Title V regulation, and that is trying to better align our local GE pattern with the areas that are listed here of CalGETS. And so the end result of 2 years of work from both the Chancellor's Office and the 5C, that's California Community Colleges Curriculum Committee. You can even see for reference the specific sections of Title V is creating areas of our GE pathway that are named identically to CalGETS pathway. And Laura, as you guys can see in the handout, she did her very best, right? Try to see which of our courses fit where. This means that coming from the chancellor's office, there's a minimum of 21 units that students need to complete for the GE, our local GE pathway. However, we can add additional requirements, which this has always been true. So previously, it was 18 required units, and then we got to add additional requirements for our institutional requirements, which brought us up to 27 units. I don't know why I couldn't think of the word unit. There it is. Unit. And what you'll see here, what we're proposing is actually bringing that number down to 25 units and keeping, obviously, we have to keep these 21, adding an additional 3 units. I mean, part of that.
Plus 3 is 24.
Maybe I'm doing the math wrong. Don't know.
English is one addition. English is one.
Oh, thank you, that's what it is, our English is 4 units, so it's for us, the minimum is 22. And then. We do the math work somehow. All right, so what we did, compare side by side, and I don't know who you are, but you ain't getting in, sorry.
I can't handle it. You go, girl.
This is our existing local GE pathway. Again, I don't expect you to be able to read it. It is, however, linked in board docs for you. And then here is what the chancellor's office is saying. You need to make yours look something like this. Right? And so what CAC did, because this is under the purview of CAC, is we formed a work group. And we thought maybe we would have some time to figure it out. The chancellor goes, oh, guess what? You need to do it by fall of 2025. Since CalGETC is also being launched in fall of 2025, you need to do this likewise by fall of 2025. Yeah, so we formed our work group and we started to do some research over the summer to see how other campuses were managing this Herculean task. And then starting this fall, we have met many, many times. I don't even know how many. And one of the first things we just started to do is to figure out where things went. Right, so you'll see in the draft being, we haven't really taken away any courses, we're simply resorting them into where they fit into these newly named areas. And so there are 6 areas that all the California community colleges will have, and then they have the option of adding additional areas. So that is what we did. We then started to ask, okay, again, like which of our student populations are the most likely to follow this local GE pathway? And that student population is our CTE students. Because again, for the most part, if a student is transfer bound, they're gonna be following CalGETC. So they're not gonna be following the GE pathway that we locally have. Again, that doesn't mean, however, that they may not be getting our local degree, because they will be completing our major requirements, but for their GE requirements, they're gonna do CalGETC. Right, that part makes sense? I was kind of stuck on it for a little while, but I will just share, I know speaking from anthropology, if I have a student asking me, should I do the AAT in anthropology or should I do our local AA? I will tell them to do the local AA, because our major requirements are more alignment with the UCs. The AATs are more alignment with the CSUs. And it's just for the nature of anthropology, there aren't a ton of great programs at the CSUs for anthro, and there are in the UCs. Okay, so you guys will, I'm sure, you can relate. All right, so we noted again, and you guys actually have the raw data attached to board docs as well. You can see, well, we have awarded a couple thousand degrees. A very small percentage of those students overall are following the local team pattern. Yes, most of them are CTE students. We likewise wanted to then say, okay, we have this really vibrant, tremendously wonderful CTE program here. You guys know, like Russ is here, Dee Dee was here a moment ago. We offer so many different programs in CTE. At the same time, we acknowledge that our CTE programs tend to have the highest number of units for the major, right? And that is the nature of their disciplines. It is a requirement often by their accrediting board or by their licensing board to have completed X number of hours. So their unit requirements for the major are big. And so I also attached that to the agenda as well, but here's just a snapshot of some of our CT. Everything in yellow is like vastly exceeding the kind of sweet mark like 60 transferable units or 60 units when you graduate. You can see here a program like Health Information Technology, it's 52.5 units just for the major. Just for the major, and they can't really do a whole lot about it because that's what their accrediting board wants, right? So if you compare them, here are our majors for transfer. And I'll just take my major, I'll take anthropology here. Whereas it's between 18 and 21 units for the major. Okay, and then I gotta add, of course, 34 units for Cal Getsy for my majors, right? And that gets me close to 60. For the CTE students, they're not likely to follow Cal Getsy because that would mean, well over 80 units just to complete their degree here. So what has happened a lot in CTE is a number of programs are offering stackable certificates, and that's wonderful because it's allowing students to achieve some documentation of specific skill sets that help them to get job advancement. But what can then happen, because students may finish some of the major requirements, is they're not finishing the GE requirements, right? So they're not actually getting the AAA, right? So when we're talking about this as a work group, we wanted to be really mindful. Even though Title V allows us to add additional requirements, wanted to be very mindful of what it is we were adding and not make a huge burden on students who are already taking a lot of units. So we wanted to make it worth their while. All right, so what we did is we took a look at those 6 areas. And we then asked ourselves, well, what's really missing? What is missing here from these 6 areas that takes us out of alignment of the mission of our college? That takes us out of alignment of the spirit of providing a liberal arts education. And the one thing that's glaringly missing for us is that area that was eliminated, and that's that lifelong learning and self-development. And so we believe that having courses that allow students to really cultivate and explore wellness, self-development, and developing their own self-efficacy for achieving their career and educational goals is worth its weight in gold. And that's what's truly missing here. So what our work group is proposing is that these courses and what we're calling in Area 7 actually help our students to meet some of the challenges that we have identified for them, some of those roadblocks that are preventing them from finishing a program. So for us, we are calling this proposed area, which is 3 units, that takes us to 25 units, applied living skills. And I really want to emphasize the applied piece, because we wanted these to be courses that were not academic or theoretical in nature. And part of that is because all of those courses of study, they're already represented in the existing 6 areas. And these are courses that are not represented in those other 6 areas, but we know are beneficial to the students' experience here in college and what they do beyond. And so we are suggesting that these courses here in Area 7, they really promote not only wellness, but likewise career exploration, computer information, and financial literacies. Likewise, too, we want to really stress that these courses, they allow a student to build on their experiences, their knowledge that they already bring into the class, and to then practically apply these techniques, either in the career sector or even in other courses that they're taking here. So some of the issues that we talked a lot about in our work group that Kathy was really great at bringing to our awareness, and I don't have to really belabor this point, is we are in a mental health crisis. And this is particularly true for younger students. So yes, we're a community college and I have students as old as in their eighties, but most of my students are between 18 and 25, but they have the highest percentage of mental health concerns, right? We live in truly stressful times. Students don't always necessarily have some of those practical skills of self-regulating, helping them to try to minimize their stress, not get rid of stress because you can't. But how do they find a balance between work, between school, between family to be able to succeed? And that is incredibly true for our CT students who often work in full-time jobs as part of their, even their educational experience with our practical courses, right? So we felt wellness was really kind of the cornerstone upon which all of those other areas, even in area 7, nest upon. Some of the other ones that I'll just share with you, is part of the reason why students are so stressed out is because students are not necessarily savvy with digital literacies. That's why courses like what the library provide are so incredibly crucial in allowing students the tools to know what is legitimate and real online and what isn't. Because that's a major source of stress and anxiety. Disinformation is really harming our students. It's as much as it harms us. We may have some of the skills to look at and go, oh, that's not, I know that's nonsense, right? But younger generations may or may not have developed that skill yet. So all of these things are crucial. And then likewise too, we can't suggest or presume that students shouldn't be involved in social media or know about AI. They have to be savvy. That's why we have some of our computer courses in there as well. And of course, trying to navigate the complexities of financial responsibilities just to go to school, let alone what you do in life. Likewise, if you are not able to really kind of figure out your financial situation, that could permanently stop your educational goals. So we felt like all of these courses really help to further a student along in reaching their goal. So that is why we have proposed that area. Nice touch. It's more for me than it is. And me. And then we can pull up the draft here on the board for you all to see.
Could we make, like that class or that area mandatory for the people that are on academic probation? Or notice, excuse me. Excuse me.
That's a good idea.
I have no idea how I roll.
That's
something
a
for you guys
different,
Families?
Oh my God, there it is pop up.
So, oh my God.
For
Get that out of
students
there.
on academic notice, which is usually about 1,500 students per semester, could you make something like this area class be some kind of a sort of mandatory meeting of the minds?
It is actually a requirement, even though it's a local requirement, it's not part of the Title V required areas, but we added that area 7 as the graduation requirement. But you're right, not all students are following the local PE. You know, those that are transferred down are gonna be following IGETC or Cal GETC starting next fall. And that area is not a requirement.
I think what she was suggesting though, Laura, is for people who are not allowed to take classes right now, because they're on academic probation, but this would be the one exception.
On probation, they can take classes, it's when
Right.
they're dismissed.
Dismissed, yeah, that's true.
But they've changed all the rules too about like
Yeah.
GPA.
most of them.
And I think as counselors, we are doing a pretty good job promoting those classes and kind of figuring out the students' circumstances and recommending the class that is appropriate to those circumstances. So that would be an intervention from, you know, counselor perspective. Yeah. But we can't make it a requirement.
Yeah, I think I've seen some of the other schools, you know, they actually have like a program where the students are engaging in a community of like-minded ill success, I guess. If you want to call it that.
It used to be a requirement a while ago, but then you also have to take into consideration if you're mandating a student to take it, then they have to pay for it.
Can I give a little,
They
here's
might
my
not have it. They might have
lifelong learning?
financial aid, they're already on essential units, so there's a lot of other things.
We used to have a one class. that
Yeah, the
was actually
PD
required,
something.
PD 20,
Yeah, I saw that you had discontinued.
that was required for students.
So I'm gonna give you a really brief sort of history. The Area E classes for the CSU GEB included, you know, a lot of same types of courses we're proposing here. At the State Academic Senate that I attend every plenary, I actually presented 3 different resolutions over the last, prior to spring. We'd already done it the 3 previous sessions. We meet twice a year to the entire faculty body, every school is represented on this addressing the health and wellness and the lifelong learning category. It was, you know, it was a hard fought situation. Our professional group, the California Physical Education Dance Professionals, we have fought hard. It was very interesting because it's always a little nerve-wracking to present a resolution and to stand up and speak and do the whole thing. And it was really interesting that of those 3 resolutions, and we have about 115 colleges, each of which is represented, and then we have some executive committees. Each of the 3 resolutions were approved by over 100 faculty in that voting group. The colleges, the community colleges were adamant that this type of a requirement is so important. And just as of July, well, June, I guess, of last year, I have all the data. We've had at least 12 colleges already approved their local PE that included either a combination of health and wellness or the lifelong learning. Some of them just added a PE requirement or health class. So the whole trend statewide with the local GE is to have that extra requirement. And I really love ours because it's applied living skills. And I think, and Laura did, you know, almost all this work. I mean, you know, she's amazing. But the courses that she came up with, I think, are so pertinent to the success of our students, whether it's that financial success or the literacy or the health and wellness, whatever. So I'm hoping, and then we wrote our SLOs, which was really sort of fun. Because we wanted to make sure you understood that these are applied skills. This is, you know, they're having the other skills in the other areas, but these are really applied skills. So you might want to explain what some of those courses are. Maybe people don't know what they are. Laura?
Yes, so we have courses in our alcohol and drug counseling program. Those are the first 3. Business Law 201 is a
204.
204. It's a fairly new class that was created by the business department. It's called Immigration Law. And the content of that course is meant to help students who might be 8540 and are trying to get through the naturalization process or figuring out permanent residency. So we thought that would be, you know, a good class for that particular student population. BMS classes, with nutrition, and human sexuality. So those are also classes that would be a benefit for students. The next set is computer literacy. So the CIS 101, computer science 101, and computer applications 101. They can have fixed on, you know, Microsoft Office, Excel, Access, PowerPoint, how to become proficient in the use of those applications. So that those skills can be applied to the other classes. EM 3110 is basic EMT certification. So that's kind of like HE 103, responding to medical emergencies. So they are CPR certified after that class. Finance 100 is financial literacy, personal money management. Used to be called, now it's personal finance. So that's another, you know, basic skills class to learn how to learn your, you know, how to manage your finances, basics of investment strategies, personal budgeting. Then we have some health education classes, those you know very well because you teach them. Library 101 was already mentioned.
PV, personal development classes, so college success, how to be a successful student in college, they cover, time management, goal setting, decision making, career development, how to make decisions about your major and about your transfer institution. And then, of course, PE activity classes, because we want to promote students to be active and healthy. And I think that's it.
The Pro
Yeah, the
138.
Pro 138 PE is also a career personal planning class that is offered at the high school. So students sometimes will take that in high school, and we thought it would be a good fit for this area as well, because they're also learning personal college success and career plans. So if you have any other suggestions, any other courses that you think fit the intent of this area, let us know, as well. Definitely.
Sort of the cool thing too is they're not all 3-unit classes, so students can mix and match some things.
Yes.
So it's like, they could take, 2 or 3 different ones to make up with 3 units, so.
When you mentioned that Pro 138D class and how it's offered at the high school, that made me think of another population of students that would be more inclined to earn an associate degree if they follow SBCCG, which is our dual enrollment students. A lot of them that have taken a good amount of dual enrollment classes just couldn't complete the SBCCG for a couple of areas that just we didn't offer at their campus, or they didn't want to go through the extra effort of taking that class with us. So I think this will definitely help that population of students to be able to earn.
And our Health 103 is a dual enrollment class too, so we have quite a few students at San Marcos High School.
Yeah.
I'm gonna play devil's advocate, because that's my job. Is there a reason not to approve this? Or not to have this area? Is there any downside?
You're asking somebody that has a strong bias.
I'm just curious if there's any, is there any downside? It doesn't
I
seem like
would
it.
say the only thing we talked about in our work group is, some people want to have the units as small as possible, and 21 is the absolute minimum. And probably some people would say, oh, we don't want to make our students do anything more than they absolutely have to. But then how healthy are our students? I mean, you all know what you're dealing with.
Right.
They don't know what they're majoring in. They have stress. They're emotionally struggling. They have financial issues. I mean, we talked about every course. It's like, they probably should take all those courses, right? Or we all should. So I think that was we understood that might be an issue of let's just have it be as small as possible. But I think we need to look out for the welfare of our students, at least the few that are actually gonna do the local degrees.
Fully counted it.
Yeah, the other thing about offering specifically PE classes is it makes our students smarter. Because when they exercise, their brain is getting oxygen. So if you.
Yeah, I have all that research if anybody wants it.
I forgot all about that. It's just common knowledge in the field that your students will be more alert in your classes. They'll be more engaged. My students take my class early in the morning. They say the next class is like brain surgery 101. They think they're going to fail it. And they end up getting like the best semester of their life when they take PE classes. So it's really important for our entire well-being.
In response to Laurie's question, I just wonder if there are some sectors of our community or some of our divisions that might feel like they would also like to be part of this world, and you've offered that to be the case, because it does feel a little bit gerrymandered from lobbyists. But I just would say, just because it's such a miscellaneous drawer of courses, so I think it would be great to be able to put the word out among our divisions and say, this is, being created, here's a criteria, here's a thought behind it. You have a persuasive kind of argument to be included in this world.
Right, I'm open to that.
Yeah,
We
I think,
are.
right now, we were looking specifically like I mean, in some ways, it's could become a good thing.
Yes,
And we did look to see, are those courses already represented somewhere else?
right.
And that's always the case. We can think of a course, oh, it's an area 4, oh, it's an area 2, oh, it's an area whatever.
Yeah.
That was. I know we need this.
And actually, I was actually the only person on the work group that had any skin in the game. But look at all the, look
And
at all.
Sally, right, library.
Yeah, but we all agreed that the library
Yeah.
101 was an important class. And look at all the options people have. They could certainly get out of here easily without taking a PE class. But I think we're open to anybody, like we added the Pro 138. And we added the PD 140, which is college success for student athletes, because we do a whole ed plan for those students.
Yeah,
And we do college success skills. So it's it was sort of an afterthought, like, how can I not know that? I teach the damn class. So it was sort of an afterthought. So I think, put it out there to your divisions and see if you have an applied type of class that would sort of fit.
Right.
So, and I'm just consulting with Ellen about this, my bias, of course, was towards the library 101, especially since we don't have English 120 anymore that help them with. Especially library research, wish we still had it. And what I didn't remember until she just reminded me is I said, can't we just put this into the transfer requirements?
We wish.
Because I can only imagine the difference it would make in our English 110 students right now if they were taking that library 101 class right now with the English 110, and I'll just say to our counselors who, isn't it?
that already.
Except they're
recommended.
I'm doing it at the end.
We can't add anything.
I know.
But we've been chatting with Ellen and the rest of the librarians about potentially offering this for dual enrollment,
Yeah,
which would be amazing.
that would be.
Do you have an update on that?
But
I have 2 updates from.
can I finish my point though, before I do that? Let me finish my point, and then yes. So now, isn't that already required though, for a lot of for the local degree anyway? Because I see that in a lot of, so is
Like
that,
a major requirement?
No, information competency area, library
Yeah.
101 is required for our.
so I'm fine for that, but are these supposed to be ones that are not already required?
We have to make the distinction
Yeah.
between a GE requirement.
And the
versus a
major.
requirement.
So some majors have
We've
it.
had to change the GE requirements because
Yeah.
of the new regulations in
Yeah.
Title V. But if a course currently has that listed as a major requirement, then that stays.
So that's what I'm probably thinking about.
And
the
years
ones that are
ago,
major.
you might have been on curriculum committee when the state came down and said, we have to have an information competency requirement.
Yes.
And they took that out.
Yeah.
So I think we're the only school that actually had that sort of left.
Well, no, I think it's fantastic, carry on, and I wish we could require it for all the transfer students.
Yeah, just an update on the dual enrollment thing. Library faculty met with Michael Liddell last week, I think. And he's gonna reach out to some of the assistant principals at I think he already spoke with someone at Carpinteria High School who's very interested in this. And we're gonna try to figure out how we could, in a formal way, have high school students taking Library 101, whether Library 101 is taught by high school librarians who have a library degree, they're not required to in California, which always works fine. But some of them do have it. So they could possibly teach it in the high schools, or that we're looking into how the high schools could support having this student, because it's an asynchronous online class. So, but having the students have some kind of real-time support for taking this online class in high school. There's a ton of potential issues, including competing access to our library databases through their networks on their campuses and all that. But hopefully that will be something that we can do. And the other thing I just wanted to say is we have written the SLA.
Oh, that's good.
Yeah, so that's, yeah, I don't know if you want to hear it or just, there'll be another update to the document that will have it.
Let's let her read it out. I love SLO.
Everyone, just wanted to draw your attention to our time. We are coming up on 4:45. We do have 2 other agenda items, one in particular that needs Senate feedback with AP 7211. If we could just take one more comment and then also say that we can also bring this back as well. Just would you please close us out?
I just was gonna say that I love how this is structured. And that it allows us to work with, as counselors, it allows us to work with students to identify what their particular issues are. And then make suggestions for them to address some of their issues. Instead of having everybody have to take the same course or the same two to choose from, having the variety allows the students to tailor it to their needs, and I think that's.
Thank you, everyone. And wanted to extend thanks once again. This is a lot of work that our colleagues at CSU are doing and also tying in with counseling as well.
Can we move to approve this or not? Oh.
Yeah, I think Katie, I think Katie's right.
Divisions.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I think so.
I think Tara's earning way too many TLUs. I just don't think that's just stunning, it's only 3. Thank you, Tara.
Right, everyone?
Nice PowerPoint.
Yes.
She always uses PowerPoints instead of the slides. It's an quality to her presentation. Everyone, just drawing your attention to the remaining 2 items that we have on our agenda. We have 15 minutes. I believe that there will be lots of discussion with regard to AP 7-11. I just want to be mindful of the time. I know that we were joined by Jen Garnet, who also wanted to tie in possibly with our discussions that Elizabeth and I also want to talk about this hearing with regard to the possibility of a testing center and exploring how this might tie in with some of the concerns on campus with regard to testing on campus, how that might also tie into the Envision plan as well. But we may not be able to get to that today. We did put it in as a placeholder for today, just in case we did have enough time. But we do not have time to pick that up, then we will bring that back for the next set. In the meantime, everyone, if we can draw your attention to the next item on the list. Excuse me, this is our review of AP 7211 on our faculty service areas. And let's see this way. So this is AP 7211 on column E of your spreadsheet. On column, oh, good. Here we go. Oh, good. So I'm gonna do a little bit of here. Kathy, you had some concerns with regard to some of the wording on page 5 of AP 7211. Would you like to pick that up as I try along?
Yes, first of all, on page 2, there was a question there, two. Should have had this up, I'm really sorry. It was the issue of when can they, no, it was it's actually on page 1. It says after initial employment or at any point thereafter. I mean, it's self-explanatory that says after initial employment. I don't think we need to add the any point thereafter. And that is true. Anytime a faculty member can apply for a change in FSA, and there's strict rules here, if you read any of this, that define that. The thing I really had a problem with was the addition of the language that Maria put in there.
Up on screen for you.
On page 5. So she says, no faculty member will be assigned to teach in a different discipline unless approved by the FSA committee to teach in such a discipline department. The chairperson and dean should be responsible for ensuring that faculty are assigned to teach only in the approved FSA. First of all, there is no FSA committee. There never has been an FSA committee. There is an equivalency committee of which I'm a member and Kim has been on there and Josh and people, we've been doing this a long time. So there's no FSA committee, and what happens when you're hired as a full-time faculty, you work with the Human Resources Department. you look at your degrees, you look at the departments, you're placed in an FSA based on the degrees you have in that department. It's not something that the administration really has much to do with. Now you can apply to have a new FSA if you teach, I think it's 9 TLUs in another department over a period of, I think it's 3 years. It's all in here. So then I could apply if I taught in another department. Let's say I got an equivalency or the course had my discipline on it. I could apply to change and have a multiple FSA. Also, the chairperson and dean should be responsible for ensuring that faculty are assigned to teach only in approved FSAs. That's just not the way it works. And then also, the FSA doesn't really tell you exactly what classes you can teach. So in my department, I have some classes that have 3 disciplines. So anybody that meets one of those 3 disciplines can teach that class. It has nothing to do with an FSA. It has nothing to do with somebody telling me that somebody can teach that class. As a department chair, I can assign that class. Now, we also know administration has right of assignment. So that's where the administration could come in and say, well, that person meets minimum quals in that department, but I don't want them teaching in that department. Now that becomes a political issue and a debate that you have with the administration. So we've had some situations where people don't really understand how you're assigned to a class. I can teach any class on this campus where my disciplines that I have meet the discipline on the course outline. If I meet minimum quals for a communications class, I can teach a communications class. I don't have to be in the communications department. As long as everybody agrees that that's cool, then that works out fine. So, you know.
That sounds like a good system.
Well, it is, and that's, and curriculum committee, what we do, we always go through the course, the faculty member says, okay, this is the discipline I want. And then it could be that there's overlapping content, and there could be 2 disciplines or more on a course, which means that anyone that meets any of those disciplines could teach that class. And we determine that curriculum, we've been doing it for 40 years, and that's how you get assigned to a class. So I don't think that paragraph doesn't even make any sense. And I mean, if Maria were here, I'd be saying the same thing because she doesn't really understand how FSAs work. And like I said, there's no FSA committee.
Well, there is one. It's convened, it's AP and the head of HR. So.
Well, yeah, I mean, they meet with HR, but when you say committee, it makes it sound like it's a faculty committee and it's
I
not.
think what they're trying to do is have oversight on people trying to migrate into different departments after they're hired. I think that's what I
But that-
don't,
Yeah.
I don't know that that's really necessary.
Yeah, I don't think that should be in this policy and I don't think that's.
But I'm guessing that I don't know if.
It might be because we just had that issue, but it's not fair that if I meet a discipline requirement for a class, that I couldn't work with both chairs and be assigned that class. So if they're gonna fight with that, then that's a big fight because all the statewide documents give you permission to do that. So I think it's just confusing if you say assigned to a different discipline based on, you know, your degrees and that you qualify for another discipline, but that's all spelled out in this policy somewhere else.
Yeah.
I mean, it doesn't need to be.
I teach in the history department and the sociology department.
Yeah.
I have a master's in sociology,
Right.
I have a master's in history and a PhD, like,
Right.
why would I need to go through some mystery committee to say I can teach?
Well, it's not even about an FSA
limited.
anyway. I mean,
Yeah.
teaching the class doesn't have anything to do with
How long would
the
that
FSA.
take too? What if there's an emergency or sub or whatever?
Well, that's the issue.
And the reality is like, I could be hired as an adjunct to teach the sociology
Right.
class without going through this mishigas, so.
Right. So anyway, I think it's something you should bring up with Maria, maybe just you, and see if she understands what all this means. And she already has to know, administration has right of assignment. I mean, they technically can walk in and tell us anything they want to have us teach. Not that we'd be happy.
Yeah, so our feedback is this is not necessary.
Yeah. And then that first thing I mentioned, I think it's spelled out that, you know, you don't have to have that and going forward, because basically the sentence assumes going forward after initial. Okay, that's my 2 cents worth. Sorry.
Laura.
Administration can't define min quals though, correct?
No.
Okay.
Oh, no, that's defined by the minimum
State.
qualifications document that the state produces.
Okay.
We have a right as faculty to appeal for a new discipline or a modification to the description of the disciplines, which happens all the time at the state level. There's new disciplines brought or change in the wording, like in physical education, when kinesiology degrees now were the degree, now we added kinesiology to that discipline description.
Before we get into the list of feedback on the FSAs themselves, is there anyone who has a follow-up comment with regard to the wording for 7211 that they also want to address?
And have you looked actually at the FSA list to make sure, I know Laura has, because she put some comments in there. It is really important that your department chairs look at this list and make sure that everything falls in line. That you have in your department, and remember, your department and your FSA don't even have to be the same name. But you should make sure that in your department particularly, you have all the disciplines listed, you know, under which you could hire someone. So anyway.
Yeah, just for 7211, please, let's all pay attention that they finally fix the dates. Yeah.
Thank you for finding those.
Just wanted to extend thanks to Barbara Bell, Danielle, and also who else?
Tara.
And also Cornelia and Tara for contributing so far. Just to give you also an update on the timetable for these changes requested on AP 7211. We had originally had October 25 as the deadline to be able to submit changes before this goes back to VCAP. We have since requested at VCAP that we actually have until November 8th to be able to submit any changes.
But the deadline for you, Josh, is you have to do that like cover sheet. So you should give a deadline for the last chance of like what, Wednesday or Thursday, November
1st.
We don't want to give, you don't need a whole week.
That was for another.
So it's, no, you have to fill out that little survey thing that they showed us, right?
That's right, yes.
So do you want it by like Wednesday, the 6th or Thursday, the 7th? Like what?
Wednesday, the 6th would give me a little
Okay.
bit more time.
At noon, at 5? Like seriously, we need a deadline.
Midnight, 11:59 PM.
Then maybe it's.
Then you have one day.
Noon? No, I've given up enough of my sleep. Maybe noon. please.
Noon. Hey, guys,
Wednesday.
check by then.
Russell, please.
Yeah, so I went over this and it looked good to me, but did you want me to throw in a comment, hey, looks good, or something to let you know that it's been reviewed and I find it acceptable? Or you-
If it's good as is, I say, let's just leave it at that. We don't.
Yeah, okay.
You're done.
So Laura made a bunch of comments on the document I looked at last night, and on the document that we open up here.
I think it's two different I think it's not the same document.
Are you
Yeah,
getting
we-
it off the spreadsheet? Where's the one?
I'm on the spreadsheet and her comments are not here, but the document I looked at last night had her comments. And then I had no way to make comments. There was no way for me to edit. To edit, yeah.
To edit, we're actually using the comment feature in the margins.
Okay, now I just open it up again.
So
And
are we
there are
allowed?
comments, so why did never mind.
So we allowed to comment on the ones that's in the spreadsheet?
the very bottom.
Yeah, because, and you know, when I first opened up this document, there weren't any comments, so I don't know what I did wrong.
So weeks ago, there
Yeah,
was a
computer literature
PDF file
Yeah,
with
right.
comments that were imported. It was a static copy. That we had uploaded, but there were some who had difficulties reading it. So I made a copy of the document as it evolved. So what we have here, we actually own, and then I'm importing those comments directly into the spreadsheet, just.
So there's a mix, because you've got spreadsheet comments and.
Yeah.
But you'll handle
Yeah.
making those match later.
Yes. These are some of the changes that were suggested. Department listed on line 69, English skills sadly no longer exist. Sociology, anthropology, archaeology department has split into two different departments. Anthropology and archaeology. Global studies is missing from the list. It is a program in a joint department now, political science and economics. New minimum quals for ethnic studies. You can now have a master's degree in ethnic studies or a master's in African American studies, Black studies, Africana studies, Latino. Wow, that is a lot of places. I actually like that. Geography is no longer part of the history department. It is in earth sciences. It looks like philosophy and psychology are not listed. I actually took a look under disciplines and also under faculty service areas. Psychology is there. Can anybody confirm that philosophy is not on?
I looked, I didn't see him, but maybe,
It's there, one oh
is
six,
it there? Okay.
number 106.
Accounting and finance are now one department. Okay, so then I can just go ahead and highlight
Take
this.
that,
We'll just go ahead and just remove
So
that.
this is work for you, all those senators who have like 9 departments, right? So you have to make sure your chairs all look at this.
Accounting and finance are now one department. There is no finance or international business or marketing department. This administration. The date for requesting an additional FSA in our current copy of 18, this was Cornelia. You had just recently put this in. I made sure that this was added to the list. The actual date for requesting an additional faculty service area was originally listed as October 15th. That's actually, according to Ed Code, it's November 15th.
I think it's.
Oh, February 15th, actually.
It's February 15th, so we need to get back more time.
Yes. And then Kathy's comment with regard to the FSA committee and whether or not that wording on the FSA committee is actually necessary. So those are the changes that we've appended thus far, everybody. Please, it would help me so that I can still stay on schedule, still see my mom on Thursdays. If you could have all of these in by Wednesday, November 6th, I would appreciate it. You have access to the doc in case you want to leave comments in context for what we are seeing here in the actual wording of the doc. That's a copy that we own ourselves. And then there's a spreadsheet here to be able to summarize at a glance. So I can pop that into a survey form so that we can bring this to the panel. All right, everyone, we are at 5:01. May I have a motion to adjourn?
Yes.
Elizabeth and Beth. Right?
Yes.
Okay.
So can I ask a question about this FSA? Done, I'm talking to Kathy.
Okay.
You're not.
What is the
Please.
point of an FSA?
Don't start at the back. It's time we were in debate finance, please. Like-
Chaos.
Oh,
The only time it's useful is when you have. work. So if I have an FSA in two different areas, then I can claim classes based on seniority and those
So are
two
you
FSAs.
gonna stay with the-
Otherwise,
I
I
have
have
to
to
start
start
it.
out of. We've never, and that's well.
I'm happy to do it if you.
We've
if that
never
helps
had,
you.
here, but most colleges have. So if we ever get to that point where we have
Yeah.
layoffs, it's gonna be important.
I would be happy to do it.
Okay.
And then.
Because
that's pointless, we're talking about it now.
But that's why it's just important to know, in order to get into different FSA, you have to.
Oh.
And then you have to keep that up. You know, I never respect what it is, how many a year, but you gotta keep that up, so I maintain that effort. It was nice to meet you all. Pardon? I would look at what the requirement is, back and give it all the street, and I would apply. And I don't think we're gonna get them out. But you know what, it doesn't hurt.
I just figured.
I verify.
I have her cell phone number, but I'm not, I don't. At first, like, you know, when I was on campus, I would always.
I can't remember. I think that.
That's something, I know.
That's the 38 thing.